it's Ray Wright. You didn't do that last video, which can be found over here, but you still want to do the tutorial today, but you don't want to take the time to do the outline. There is a downloadable outline that can be found on my website over here at dragonflyartstudio.ca. Once you have the outline in place, then we're going to be coming in to create this watercolor. Now, I do have the Aurora Borealis in my sky, but if you don't want to do the Aurora Borealis, that's okay. You can go with whatever design elements you want for your painting. Because this is watercolor, make sure that you do have your watercolors readily available. I like to take mine and put it over onto my palette, which I am doing right now. So I've got my yellow, my cerulean, and then I'm going to come in with some black, and that's just because it's a night sky, so we need to make sure that we include a nice dark color in there. You can use Payne's gray. I love Payne's gray. Black will absolutely work though. Okay, once we have whatever color you want to have for your sky on your palette readily available on your palette, then we're going to begin. The paintbrushes that I'm going to be using today, I have 4 different ones. You will notice that they are all round brushes and they all vary in size. And one thing that I also want you to notice is the point that's available on the round brushes. And this point is what's going to help us get those really nice, very fine details. Okay? So if you don't have all of these brushes, that's okay. Realistically, you could do this entire painting with just 2 brushes. So want to have one very large brush and one that's a little bit smaller, just making sure that you have a lovely point at the edge of your brush though. Okay. Make sure your napkins and your water are readily available. I also like to have a pipette. The pipette allows me to put extra water everywhere that I want to see it when I'm getting into my painting. Now, I want to get in to do my background first, but a couple of things before we get started. Now, before we get into this, because we have never done watercolor painting before, is we are going to talk about the tape edge. I want to make sure whatever kind of paper you're using has properly been taped down. You want to make sure that you have covered over the edges and that everything is secured right up against your paper. Now, I'm taking an 11 by 14, I'm turning it into an 8 by 10. But if you're using an 8 by 10 sheet of paper or a 9 by 12 on a larger board or even on your table, make sure that you come in, and I want you to use your nail to make sure that the tape goes right along the paper edge and secures it in place. This is going to stop your paper from buckling, okay? One thing to notice as well is how you want to have your painting be finished. Do you want a finished edge or an unfinished edge? A finished edge is going to come all the way to the tape. When you're going to do this, you're going to add water and paint all the way through. Then when you do the tape peel, you get that really satisfying pull of the watercolor against the tape. Now, you can also have an unfinished edge, and the unfinished edge can be done in 2 capacities. You can do an unfinished soft edge, or you can do an unfinished hard edge. A soft edge means that the water is going to go all the way to the tape, but the paint doesn't reach to the tape. What happens here is the paint is going to feather into the water, leaving a little bit of a gap between water and tape. If you're going to do a hard unfinished edge, the water and the paint do not reach the tape edge, and you're left with a more harsh edge. Some people like that, some people don't. So first, before we begin, I want you to make sure you know how you want to finish your painting. Do you want a finished or unfinished edge? And if you want an unfinished edge, which variety are you going to go with? When you know what you want, then we're going to get started. So what I'm going to have you do is saturate your sky. Now, I'm going to saturate using my pipette, and I'm going to go all over my sky. Then, using a damp brush, I'm going to come in and add tons more water, just kind of blending that all in, completely saturating my sky. I don't want to go into my mountains. We're only going to get into the sky itself. We want to separate these so that when we go to fill it in, we don't have to worry about getting bleed throughs. We don't want the paint to go from one side to the other. We want it to stay secure in the area we're working. Okay, after you have saturated it, I want you to double check. Pick it up and you're gonna angle your work and make sure that you can see that sheen. If the shine is not there, it means that the water is starting to dry. So we actually have to go back in and we need to add more water, just a little bit on your brush, and you're gonna smooth it in place. When you're satisfied with how much water you have in place, then you can start getting into your color. Now, how much color do you want to have? How much of the dark night sky do you want to include? I want to have a lot more of the color of the aurora borealis. So adding in a little bit of blue to my brush, and I'm very gently going to kind of wiggle my brush in place. Now make sure that you're holding your paintbrush like a watercolor artist, because a watercolor artist holds their hand open and comes away from their ferrule. The ferrule is the metal part of your handle. Okay, now that I've done this, I'm gonna quickly clean off my brush into my yellow, and I'm gonna go beside the blue, not touching the blue yet. And then add a little bit of water and very gently swing my brush side to side. And swinging my brush side to side like that is gonna allow the colors to blend together. Going back over into my blue and beside the yellow, not on top. And how saturated you make this, that's up to you. Okay. Clean off the brush, a little bit of water, and we're just gonna very gently swing the paintbrush back and forth. Not going into the entirety of the yellow, but doing it even just a little bit is going to give the illusion of dancing light. Okay. A little bit more water, back into yellow. Be sure that your paper is not starting to dry out on you, and if it is, clean brush, reapply more water. Okay. Swinging it in before it has a chance to dry. Getting that dancing light. A little bit more blue. And we're just gonna go back and forth between our colors. And that dancing color happens with just a very gentle flick of the wrist. Back and forth, just like that. Take your time, but we do want to go fast, because if we completely take our time, what's going to end up happening is the paint is going to dry before we have a chance to blend anything together. Just going to saturate this a little bit more with a bit of extra pigment. And as I mentioned previously in my last video, I want this section to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to throw a little bit more yellow on there, I think. Just to really kind of drive it home, this is the lightest section of my sky. And darken up the pigment on this side with just a faint amount of yellow. And then swinging that in. There we go. Okay. Finishing off with a little bit more blue. Okay. And swinging that in as well. So in my sky already, I have given an established area of highlight, which is over here. Now, one thing that I want you to notice as well is if you have any pooling, as soon as you're done your sky, I want you to look for pooling. If you have little puddles happening on your sky, what I want you to do is take your napkin. You're gonna find a pointed edge of your napkin. Do not press, gently tap into the puddle and allow that water to soak up into the napkin. If we press down, what's gonna happen is that the excess paint is gonna come into the napkin, but we don't want the paint, we just want the water. So we're just very gently gonna press in to the puddle, absorb that extra water, just like that. So why do we do this? We do this because if we leave the puddles in place, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna get something called cauliflowering. And cauliflowering is fantastic if you're doing trees or bushes or grass or anything like that. But if you want to do a night sky, you need to make sure that it's gonna be a smooth blend when it dries. And if you're trying to do a smooth blend and you have puddles, what's gonna end up happening is that cauliflower effect is gonna pull away from whatever potential nice clean blend you could have. So we're gonna make sure that we save our blending. And here we have our little sky. I'm just gonna come in here and do a bit more of the brush strokes, just to get a little bit more of that dancing happening in my night sky. Because I love the idea of the aurora borealis in motion, so I really kind of want to play with that a little bit. Now, if you still see the sheen on your paper, you can continue working in that area. If the sheen stops being visible and you continue working on it, you're gonna end up pilling your paper. So we don't wanna pill the paper. What we're gonna do instead is we are going to allow it to completely dry and then we can work on top of it. When we're ready, we're gonna leave the mountains alone. We're gonna pop down and we're gonna get into our water. So getting into your water, we're gonna use your pipette again. And I want you to think about the color choices you made in your sky, because those colors are going to reflect down into your water, not necessarily in the same kind of pattern, but we just want to make sure that we at least see the colors in place. Now you're also going to see some shadows happening on the underside of here, but we're not adding those in yet. We'll get there, not yet. So we do this wet on wet technique, just like what we did for the sky. And we're gonna come in, and you can see here, I'm going over top of my tree with this. That's okay, my tree was done in ink, which means that it's not going to kind of get into the colors of my background. If you use like a Crayola marker, you absolutely do not wanna go on top of the tree in that instance because it is water soluble. We don't wanna have to worry about it spreading into our background colors. Okay, double check for sheen. So pick it up and adjust. Okay, I see sheen. I think we're good to go. Make sure you have your colors on hand. I'm gonna start with indigo. And I'm going with indigo just because it's a darker variation of the color I have in my sky, which is cerulean. Look at that bloom. Oh my gosh, I am obsessed. That was gorgeous. Did you guys see that? I loved that. Okay. Coming in with that gorgeous bloom, and then I'm gonna pop in with a little bit of cerulean. There we go. This is giving winter vibes, and I am so here for it. And I want you to see here, I'm giving a little bit of birth in the colors. So just dragging out some of that color here so we can give the illusion of ripples in the water. And all that is a clean, dry brush, and then just blending that in. So the clean, dry brush comes in, you scrape off, and then just swipe on your napkin. It's literally just that easy. Okay, I'm gonna come a little further down. And again, I'm gonna get into some indigo. Indigo is fabulous for shadows. There we are. And down here. Now, I don't actually want this to be a winter scene, so I'm gonna make a little bit of a variation here. There we are. Popping this in. Okay. So what I'm gonna do to avoid the winter scene is to actually, when I go to paint these in, I'm gonna paint them in with actually using some greens, which is gonna give us more of a summer kind of vibe. But I'm not gonna stop here. I'm gonna throw a little extra shadow in place, and I'm gonna use that with a combination of indigo and violet. I'm just gonna blend that in over here on my palette. Just going for a little bit of a darker, there we are. So do you see that progression from that violet into this lovely blended color? I'm just gonna get a little bit darker where I want to see the shadows of my mountains. Now, in the last video, we talked about where the mountain shadows would be placed, and it's all relative to where you have your light source and how far away the light source is from whatever object is hindering the light from reaching the water. Giving a little bit of space here for some ripples. Clean off my brush, add a little bit of water. Let's kind of smooth that in a little bit more. And there we have a little bit more of that shadow coming into play. Now, I don't have any yellow in here yet, so I'm gonna pop in and just really quickly allow the color to just kind of sit in place wherever I see a little bit in my sky. So just allowing it to settle. You don't have to do tons of blending, fortunately, with watercolor, is that watercolor actually doesn't require a lot of blending. It can sort itself out. Watercolor is pretty good for that. You just put the colors together, give them a little bit of water, and they'll figure themselves out. There we are. Relax your hand, blend it in place. There we go. And if I'm going too fast for you, you can absolutely pause the video. Rewind it if you need to. There we go. I'm just gonna pop in a little bit to hide behind the tree. Fortunately, because the tree was done in ink, it's gonna absorb any color that I put on top of it, so I don't have to worry about resting additional colors on top of that tree. Okay, I'm gonna add extra shadows in after it dries. If I try to do it right now, I'm just gonna end up making a big mess of everything. So I'm gonna leave it alone, pop over, I'm gonna get into my mountains. Now I'm actually gonna do this with a little bit of Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is a gorgeous, gorgeous color whenever you're wanting to work with anything natural. So trees, rocks, that kind of thing. And then we're gonna just pop in here with a very wet brush and do the darker sides first. Coming in all the mountain sides. Adding that in. Came out a little further. That's all right. Remember, it's not about the finished product when we're starting out. If you are new to art, it's not about what it's going to look like at the end. Did you enjoy the process? Would you want to try it again? And if you want to try it again, the cool thing is that you know the process, so you know how to do it, okay? All right, a little bit lighter now, so I'm gonna add some more water onto my paintbrush, which is gonna dilute the pigment. Then we're gonna pop in to the lighter side, and we're gonna add it in along the bottom here. And we can see here, just by adding in water, the difference in the color. A little extra water on the top there to dilute the pigment. And then we have the lighter side and the darker side of our mountain. There, just like that. Now, if you're feeling fancy, sometimes we feel fancy and sometimes we don't, then you can come in, you can add a little extra shadow if you want to. You do not have to. There we are. You can add that in with black. You can add it in with Payne's gray. There's no one way or wrong way to do it. If you want to add an extra dimension, Payne's gray and indigo. And the same kind of technique. This is known as dry brush effect. So it's just minimal amount of water and paint on your brush, and then just flicking to get that effect of the mountainside. Minimal amount of paint and water. Drag it down as fast as you can. Do not let the paint settle on the paper with your brush stroke. We want to rush it down the mountainside. Think avalanche. Okay, when you have that in play, then we're gonna pop down, we're gonna fill in these little guys down here. Now, I'm gonna start with a lighter sap green. And I'm gonna fill that right in. Nice and saturated on my brush. And I actually just realized I have been doing this entire thing with all of the same brush. So I actually have only used one brush this entire thing. I always have extra brushes just in case I want to add extra detail. But if you have a very nice round brush, it's very thick in the belly, and then the toe of the brush, the bristles, is very, very pointed. You can actually do so much with that. All right, I'm gonna mix a little bit of permanent green and a little bit of indigo on my palette. Make a very nice dark green. And then on the underside, just tapping a little bit of that green in, and you can see that variation already starting to appear. And because I'm tapping instead of swiping, the paint is releasing onto the paper and it's pooling in certain areas. If you feel a little bit fancy, you can come in with a tiny little bit of black or Payne's gray on your brush, tapping into the bottom so that we have 3 variations of green here. Leave it alone, don't blend it. I want you to leave it alone, and I want you to leave it alone because the water will sort itself out. So you don't actually have to do the blending with this. It'll do it all by itself. Okay, onward over here to the next one. Lots of water in the belly of the brush, which is allowing it to kind of smoosh all over, just like that. Okay, clean off that permanent green and indigo combination. We're gonna tap along the bottom here, smoosh it in, let the paint pool in different areas. We don't wanna be super precise about it. Okay. The more precise we try to make it, the more unrealistic it's gonna appear. Now, if you wanna go even further, add a little bit of black or a little bit of indigo down to the bottom. And just let the colors kind of do their thing. If you want to take off some of that color to make it look a little bit lighter, closer to your light source, you absolutely can. Make it a little bit darker down at the bottom. The higher the contrast, the more realistic it's going to appear. There we go. I'm going to leave this alone for a moment. I'm going to pop back up over here with some Payne's Gray. And then very, very gently, right at the horizon line, adding in that darker color. And then very gently smoothing that in. Very quickly going back and forth, which is going to give the illusion of ripples in the water. Just darkening up where we want to see the shadow and not completely filling it in, because then again it looks a little bit unrealistic, a little unnatural. So not fully filling it in. There we go. A little bit of a shadow underneath these little bits of island. For anybody who's interested in the materials used throughout the session, I'll drop that into the description box. If you want to learn how to do another technique and another kind of design, drop it down into the comments, send me a DM. And if you followed along with the tutorial, and I really hope that you did, I hope that you guys had fun with it, and you do post it to socials, don't forget to tag the studio. The studio is Dragonfly Studio Guelph. I would love to see what your creations look like. So don't forget to tag me so that I can see your beautiful creations. There we go. And there we have it. You've made a beautiful watercolor painting. Thank you guys so much for following along with me. When you're ready to remove the tape, one thing to note is that you want to make sure that the entire painting has dried before you remove that tape, because we don't want to accidentally tear our paper. If the painting is still wet, what's going to end up happening is that first layer of paper is going to pull completely off, and we really don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to have you do instead is wait for it to dry. Then you're going to take off that first layer of tape. Instead of pulling straight up and down, what I want you to do is pull off to the side like this. So it lays flat against the paper as you pull along the paper edge, okay? Now I'm actually gonna leave mine for a little bit because mine does need to dry, and I really don't wanna have to worry about it kind of getting smooshed. I really don't want to have to worry about it tearing. So I'm going to leave it as it is right now, and then I'm going to snap a photo, send it to, and then put it up online so that you guys can kind of see what it looks like. But I hope you guys had fun. Thank you guys so much for following along. If you really liked it and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to share this with your friends, because maybe one of them would like to try watercolor for the first time. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Remember to be kind and always stay colorful. Bye.